Glad
Gotta
somebody.
get that thing back on. Hey, do we ever know how many people are listening?
Every time you hear that noise, that's somebody connected.
So you count,
But is
But
anyone
you-
counting?
I usually count sometimes, sometimes I don't.
so that's a no.
Yeah.
The
It's an Adrian, I don't know.
The best answer is I can, if you need to know.
Sandy, are we through with miscellaneous?
Adrian has one.
Adrian.
They were ready.
Please enter your four-digit. We will now connect you to your call.
No, I don't.
You are the only caller in this conference. Please wait.
Nobody's enjoying this right now.
Okay, you got something, Adrian?
All right,
I thought you had
we're
one more.
gonna we're gonna start back with
Go ahead.
miscellaneous, and it was Adrian, you.
All right, I have one. CDBG grant. About a year and a half ago, we did a CDBG grant. About 10 individuals got money to do their homes. We are a lien holder on all 10 of those properties for 5 years. They are starting to get insurance checks. They are being written to the homeowner and the city. They cannot cash them. We have to place them in escrow. All of their contractor bills we need to pay out of that escrow. So my question and hope is that I want the council to approve for our policy, any new bank account needs to be approved by council. So my request is that you approve me opening an escrow account, just one, we'll commingle it all, I'll track it separately on spreadsheets, and designate me the signer so I can do it without having to deal with finding somebody every time there's a contractor check.
You have to pay the bills?
Yeah, when they get their bills from their roofing, they bring it to me, I write the check, and track the escrow. Because it is our lien, so.
As far as signing, I still think we need 2 signatures.
Geez. I was hoping to speed it up by having the
I
escrow account mine,
understand
but
that, but I wanna make sure everything's tracked well and properly. It's not that I distrust you, don't get me wrong, but, I personally, think we need 2 signatures.
and it's going to be just a regular checkbook. I'm not doing the commercial print on the computer, on the handwriting.
So you write the check to the A and B Construction?
A&B Roofing Company.
Well, I like the 2 signatures, you and somebody else, because you're here, so whoever comes in, you can grab them and say, sign this, please.
Okay. I just need a motion to open this account because our policy states the council has to establish all new accounts. And I will do it tomorrow.
Make a motion to open another checking account to cover the deposits for the CDBG grants, and then making checks out to the various as needed.
Thanks.
Can you add also that it's Adrian and one council member?
Adrian
with
and one
the
council
selection.
member is.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any opposition? Okay, motion carried.
So I will need, when I get this account signed, everybody will have to go to St. Joe and sign that signature.
That's what I was just fixing to say, I do
Sorry.
that.
I'll get it open, but
Yeah, it's
then I'll
a
tell them that you have to
pain
stop it.
I mean, you do realize this is a different kind of account than what we're,
Yes, sir.
Right.
we're not dealing with taxpayer dollars here, we're dealing with just an escrow account where you have to have a bill that matches the check, so it's pretty easy to track.
Yep.
Would it, no, pass. I was gonna say, could it be Tanya and
I don't think I can.
I don't care, but as far as long as there's 2, I just think there needs to be a check and balance. That's up to.
You gonna check the bills?
Is there an issue?
If I sign the check,
I don't.
Alright, let's go.
I don't know what our policy is.
We'll
for
have
that.
one.
Alright, so, council members, when you get you can't bring the signature cards, you have to go get them.
It'll be ready Friday morning, and I'm gonna say that to them going tomorrow.
And you'll have, we'll do it here?
Nope, have to go to
Later.
Centennial
Okay,
Bank.
okay.
If
All right,
Nick
other
says,
miscellaneous.
I was gonna say, if Nick says there's no issue, I could be that second.
So the only reason there'd be an issue is if we have ordinance that says the city administrator has no authority to sign checks. I don't know how to look.
We'll look at that, if you guys are comfortable with that, it'll save everybody from going. We have to go anyway.
Well,
Doesn't matter.
the motion was for a council member.
I'll get it done right away, because there's people that wanna start doing work on the homes.
Okay,
you know, we want to help them, we're not really wanting to.
okay, miscellaneous, others? Anyone? Okay, moving on then to, we're going to the comp plan, okay? All right, take off.
All right, so the comp plan, this is the plan that's been in the works for about a year. You guys have had a few weeks to review it. I've received questions from a couple of you. I've talked with each of you. So I don't know, Mayor, if you just want to, Alara's here, if you just want to ask
Hey,
her
Alara.
questions. Keep in mind that this is recommended by P and Z. You have that final authority to change, remove, change whatever you don't agree with. So this is just recommended.
All right, well, who, Rex, you got any questions? Or comments, or, I mean, or,
You know, I don't, when you look at it, I mean, you could look at it from two different ways. Agree with it, wanna change things, it's gonna be tough. All of us are gonna have to make changes. As bad as I make it, I'm gonna make changes in my place, so, you know, I think you look at it as a big picture, and we try to decide what's best for Mexico Beach, the majority of Mexico Beach.
you got any specific areas that you want to address, or you?
You know, one thing, I read something there that said, there's a requirement for, comparability analysis. It said it was new. And it says this is to protect existing residential neighborhoods from encroachment or incompatible development. And then, you know, what, I see that's a new thing in there, and then we come at 187, and then you allow for non-conforming structures that were standing over 1010 to be rebuilt to the density or intensity they were prior to the storm. And I wonder, you know, when you're doing that, why would you put something new that seems to, almost to me, to contradict what you're fixing to ask to go back to? I don't know if that makes sense. It was just something that
What section is that in?
let me see. It's on page, when you open this up, just on the second page, it says also new to this plan is a requirement. It's
Well,
about.
it's in the executive summary.
Right, in the summary,
Oh.
in the summary.
There is a new policy, 1.8.11, that talks about the compatibility analysis.
Yeah,
I think that's the policy you're referring to.
probably, yeah.
Do you wanna,
Yeah, that policy was introduced to help protect existing residential uses from uses next door that might not be compatible, or something that might be a little more intrusive, or not, something that might have late hours, a commercial business, and it just requires that the new use do an analysis to existing uses when it's residential, to make sure that you're not gonna have a nuisance issue down the road when the commercial or whatever it might be is developed next to the residential. That's the policy 1.8.11. I think the other policy you were referring to, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, was policy 1.8.7.
Mhm.
And that was a policy that was recently introduced, and it was introduced post-storm. And it talks about being able to put back what was there before October 10th, which is the date of the storm.
and Mayor, I can kinda jump in on a couple of the issues that I saw
Sure,
that.
I mean, I'm just gonna, I don't know how many questions we all have here.
So let me just, a couple of things. You'll see this is minor. There was a requirement that Highway 98 couldn't have, back out parking, couldn't back out on Highway 98. Laura and I talked, that's a DOT recommendation. You're not required to have that policy. That would be one that you may wanna reconsider. I'm not sure that's
That's
a,
on my list.
Yeah, it's
that's
on
one
mine.
that you would wanna do. We don't have to do it that way, it's just recommended by DOT. There is a policy, that if you have, for residential to be allowed in, general commercial, they have to have, it requires commercial on the first floor. Again, I think that's a bad idea. We've got a lot of homes that are.
That's
have to be
on my list.
rebuilt in general commercial. I think that's one you guys, might want to reconsider. The third one, that gives me a little angst, and we talked about it at P and Z, is this blanket approach that everybody gets to build back the way it was before the storm. I think that, first of all, we haven't yet looked at how many homes we're talking about. It could be a handful, it could be more, but if we want to allow, in certain circumstances, people to build back, and I think there are places where you're gonna want people to be allowed to build back the way they were before the storm. Don't take a blanket approach, because what they're doing in this, and I know Laura and I have talked about it, Nick and I have talked about it, and Laura and I are in agreement that, and I think Nick is too, that we should take a more specific, targeted approach instead of just this blanket statement that everybody gets to go back. Because essentially what you're doing is, the date in the comp plan has always been 1991, the date this code was adopted. There is language already that allows you to make decisions in the event of natural disasters on density. You can already make exemptions for setbacks.
Hang on.
Can you guys mute on the phone, please? Can you mute? Thank you. So you can already, you're not held to setbacks in the comp plan, so that's something that the council has the authority to grant variances under. And density is the other one that I think the comp plan had language in it before, allowing the council to, after a natural disaster, to make exceptions based on density to let people rebuild. So I don't really think that this blanket policy to let everybody go back the way they were is needed, first of all. And there may be some situations where we don't want it to go back the way it was. So I think that you might want to, and you don't have to make this decision today, you know, the transmittal hearing is next week, think about it, but to be more targeted with that. And not change the date from 1991 for code that's been on the books for almost 2 decades, and suddenly we're gonna move it. What was the point in adopting code if we're gonna throw it out when we have a storm and start over? I think we should be more educated about what we're gonna allow to come back. So those are just my comments on that. Laura, if you
No,
wanna
I
jump in.
I agree. I think the intent was to help people when they were building back, so they knew exactly what they were dealing with, because they could go with what they had. But I agree that it's so wide open that you might get back things that you didn't want there or weren't grandfathered, and now are able to go back because of this policy. So it could use a little more study to really figure out what it's impacting. We don't really know, because it's just a wide open citywide, everybody goes back, the way it's written.
Do you think that opens itself up to just all different kinds of situations and a large number? Or you think it's I mean, I could just see us getting, with Royce and with the building department decide that. Who would decide
Well,
what can and what
I
can't
think
go?
that's something you're gonna have to, the council would need to decide. So I think, my point is, I think we put language in there that gives you the authority to make those decisions, instead of putting this blanket statement in there.
Did everybody?
Because we have to, and this is something I mentioned to the P and Z, you have to remember that a lot of this land is already sold. We got a lot of people sell their lots already. So we're talking about owners coming in, different owners coming in. And developers, you don't know what they're gonna build or what they wanna build. And the intent of the P and Z was to, again, you guys, I've said this to you a million times, you guys have been governing with compassion since the storm. And I'm proud of that fact, and I think we can govern with compassion, but be smart about it, and not go overboard, that now we're gonna have new owners coming in and doing things that, you know, it's one thing to say, here's an individual owner allowing them to build back what they had. But to allow a developer to come in and do a 32-foot, a different unit on each floor is not really what we would wanna do, so.
I'm concerned with that also, not just the new owners, but very compassionate for the person that purchased the property before 91, was grandfathered in, still here. But the person that had that and then sold it 2 years ago to me, and I'm supposed to know what, the grandfathering means and everything, and all of a sudden I'm gonna just let them go back to what it was, and they purchased with the understanding there was a grandfather clause there. I wanna be fair, and to me, that's not really being fair to a lot of people, given, grandfathering people in all 2 years where we have people that have come before us on some of these grandfather things, and we said, grandfathered in, you can't do that, and now we're gonna open it all back up.
And you also have to consider all of the variances and all of the people who wanted to do things that the city has turned down. And
That's
said,
what I'm
no, you're not
talking,
gonna do, and now we're gonna
So
open it
I
up.
wanna be compassionate, but I think we can't just open the gates.
But is that in here or is that in the executive summary?
It's actually in the comp plan, it's,
Policy 1.8.7 in the strike-through document, it's on page 1-21.
Yes. What's it in the real plan, not the strike-through plan?
Well, the real plan of it.
In
the
the
same
non-strike-through
It's the same
plan,
policy,
it's on
1.8.7.
page 24.
1.8.7.
Yeah.
Okay, you're right, it's in the executive summary, okay.
Let me have a couple of comments on, this is a big issue, the non-conforming use, so first, the comment would be to kind of clarify what we're talking about. This is really about the rules that are in our comprehensive plan, and depending on the way it's drafted, maybe the rules are in land development regulations. So the building code's separate, or the building code is the building code, we're not granting exceptions or variances or grandfathering from that. That has its own rules. And then our floodplain ordinance is also separate. We have that in our code of ordinances. So if it's strictly a flooding issue or a building code issue, people are gonna come back up to code. If they have the wrong windows, they're gonna have to get the right windows, that kind of thing. So what we're really talking about is things like the size of the lot, how many units on a lot, maximum height that's allowed, those kinds of issues. Other comment, this is primarily a policy choice for the city, but as far as any legal advice you'd want, well, this is a really touchy issue because it touches on whether somebody's gonna be allowed to build or not build, or to build what they wanna build versus something else. And the safest approach on that is to rely on your 11-year-old rule that's been on the books for a long time, and just stick to it. When you change the rule, even if you don't think you are, you don't intend to, you're probably gonna pick some winners and some losers, probably inadvertently, and those losers are gonna be the first ones at the courthouse.
And,
All right.
and Nick, I think the current plan does, the current comp plan allows for the council to make exemptions on density.
I don't,
Is it density
It-
and,
it-
or maybe
not
that's in the
density.
LDR?
Yeah, it must be in the LDR, but you would not be able to accept the density. But you could accept setbacks, you can get a variance for setbacks, or on any other thing that's issued and listed in the LDRs, you could get a variance from.
And I think the setback helps those folks on Pier Road in places where they've got those little strips of lot and they're, building
Yeah, there's
those
a lot
from
of those,
setback to
yeah.
setback.
Can't we, if we know that there's certain areas where we would have to make an exemption accepted, can't we list like on Pier Road? I have a hard time having an open blanketly, and anybody can come to the city and say, I want a variance, I wanna build 2 feet from my lot line. I think we're opening a hornet's nest with that. If we know certain areas that need it, I know it'd be hard to figure that out sometimes, but just list them in that area.
Well,
Can you play it?
let me give you an example of that. If you look at high-density residential, which used to be tourist residential, They changed it to high density.
Mhm.
And that's a great term to use, but they didn't change the density. They left it at 8 dwellings per unit. And if you look at the zoning map, which is,
Not here. Okay.
most of tourist commercial is on the south side of Highway 98 from 22nd Street west. The majority, overwhelming majority of those units, almost all of the south side, there's a few scattered off of 15th Street. But if you change the density to truly high density, these people that are caught in these little strips of land would be able to build back. You wouldn't have a variance. If you don't change that, you're gonna have 140 to my count automatically gonna be non-conforming. So if you're gonna change the term of high-density residential to high-density residential, if you change that to 18 dwelling units instead of 8, almost every person in that zoning category would have the option to rebuild. And then you eliminate 37th Street or 16th Street or 15th Street or whatever, trying to segregate by town. Just take the zoning category and change it, and change the density. I don't know why they changed it to high density, but they didn't change the density.
You can certainly make that change, you can change the density to.
And if you
something
look
higher.
at the zoning map for tourist, I'm used to saying tourist residential, but we'll call it high-density residential. And everything in that zoning category becomes an option for them to put back, to build on those little slivers of land.
Out of curiosity's sake, since you counted as a percentage, those little bitty slivers of land of that area you're talking about, is that a big percentage? I don't know, it's a big thing, and I'm just kind
The
of curious.
percentage of what?
In other words, of the ones that are slivered out now, is that a majority of that chunk of land?
Look at it, just look
Yeah,
at
I
it.
know, I can see this part is
Yeah,
majority, I don't know what it
yeah,
is.
that's the canal. Oh, yeah, I don't
So
know,
it's
I don't know if it's a
already-
majority, but it affects by
Oh,
far
I
the
understand what
majority
you're
of
saying.
the landowners of the community.
Mhm.
In that area, in that zoning category.
Yeah,
What we could do too is look at those that are so small and make those 18 units to the acre and keep the rest at the 8. Because if you make them all 18 units to the acre, they're probably
That's
gonna all
true.
try to
You
redevelop
give,
at
you
18.
give a guy that's got a single family house a chance to tear it down and put in a bunch of, but think about if you, and I've thought of this many times in this zoning category. If we were starting this city in 1949, wouldn't that be where we want the most density for our tourists? Isn't that the area of our city that we would designate if we're gonna have a high density? I mean, think about Pier Road. It was sort of what was wrong with that?
I didn't see, other than the fact.
It
where you
does
put
give
your
the
garbage.
landowner, though, a value bump.
Mhm. It does.
No question about that. But again, maybe somebody could wanna go buy it, and, they might wanna put a single family house.
If
I
the-
don't think that means, Laura, that every lot would become Pier Road.
But the same token, if we were in a way, if this lot, which is good size here in that area, wants to break it up, they still have to come in front of the council and in front of zoning
Of course.
to get that.
I'm only talking what exists.
I
All
know,
those
I
little
know,
slivers
I'm
that
just
exist.
saying the other lots that would enhance their ability if they went through this to put more houses there, they
That's
still have to come here.
They only have
And
to
so-
come before the council if they're gonna divide that lot,
That's
split
right.
that lot. But
Yeah.
they could come back and build a quad on that, where a
Okay.
single-family home is now, and that's, I think it's a great idea to look at that area, but I don't know, I want us to be careful, because remember our water sewage, concurrency is all based on what we expected that,
The maximum.
usage, the maximum usage to be in that
We've
area.
purchased,
so-
we've purchased, we could handle that.
Yeah,
We could purchase volume of sewer.
But you also have to think about those single-family owners who own there and
Do they want
how
all
they're
these
gonna
little tiny houses?
feel. But I think it's the right approach, I'm just not sure the answer to stop, to make sure
Well,
you
for
don't
the
have.
council,
ordinance.
our decision should be, or in my opinion, our job should be, how do we, there's no sense automatically putting in non-conforming structures. And that's what that will do to a large section of that town, of our town.
And I agree with you in a lot of ways. I think before we did it, we might want to take a good look at it and see if there's areas in there that we may want to, if you want to call it, rezone slightly different.
But you can
know.
see you
I know.
can see that they're scattered around,
Yeah, I
and you'll
know.
be talking hundred and
But
fifty feet of
again-
38th Street and 200 feet of something else.
I understand, I'm just saying it before we make any.
Well, that was one of mine,
That's
well, that was
not bad.
one of mine, I'm gonna finish mine, then I'll be quiet. Commercial, general commercial, Tanya mentioned that, that would be devastating to our community to stay with that language. I don't know, I mean, I'd rather just stay just like it is.
Which aspect? On general
Mhm.
purpose?
General commercial, number two, the density. That it just simply stay just the way it's written now. Which allows residential, it's 18 dwelling units per acre, which is what it is now. And it also, allows for residential. That thing of making it stay commercial, you must put something commercial there and then build on top of it, I think is that'd be
That's something I might see from the Joe Company when they open up their new commercial area. But again, we were trying to stay the town we were at the same time as we're doing this, and we did and have, and I haven't heard any problems with people living on the bottom floor or having a residential in the areas. I don't see any issues with that.
I didn't say I just don't think we should make it mandatory.
No,
I'm okay if
I'm
you wanna
okay if they
put
want to, yeah,
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
It's
If,
the mandatory.
There's a real estate office, it's Harmon Realty for an example,
Mhm.
Right, they did.
they
They've
did
done
that,
Yeah,
Yeah.
nothing wrong with it.
I don't,
This is written as if that's the only way you can do it,
and I disagree.
so.
And that was their intent.
So I'm just saying, for me, that would take that out. And the other one I had, well, this is, I think, already been mentioned, but 2.2.3 is where that back out thing, and that's, I didn't agree with that. And the other one I have, I guess it's all new, 5.2, it says new, expanded, and redeveloped marinas.
The working waterfronts.
Yeah, the working waterfront, I don't think we have anything that's considered, we talked to Linda Shelley about it, I don't think we have anything that meets that.
Definition.
Well, so that's literally, but when it said new, expanded, or redeveloped marinas, and then it gives a list of requirements. So does that apply to somebody that's just coming in here new, or does that apply to who's here, or
Did you say that was 1.5.2?
5.2.2?
5.2.
5.2.2.
That's the one with the
Yeah, I
residential
just
and
wanted
the
to-
working waterfronts, yeah.
And then I had a question mark of why it was in there. 'Cause it's not in the
Coastal
new.
management element.
Huh?
It was,
So it's
is
5.2.
it 6.2.2?
5.2. That's what it says, but mine says 5.2.2.
Yeah, new and expanded redeveloped marina shall 5.2.
Okay, maybe I read it on the executive summary.
Unless the number's wrong on it, and I didn't look at
I
that.
got a copy
That's
of
in
the
the
same
executive summary?
It says it's in because it's
Yeah,
custom
that's
as
all. Yeah.
Okay, okay, yeah,
Okay?
We talked about that,
Mhm.
and that's the residential,
You mean, what's it under, the
Yeah.
category?
Can you read that, Mayor, just read the section again, the
It
policy?
says new, expanded, and redeveloped marinas shall, And then it gives a list of 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 things that a new developed marina has to do.
And so the number, so the numbers that, you would like to see removed are number 3.
No, I mean, it's not in the it's not in the current comp plan. This is a whole new thing.
Yeah, there is a legislative requirement to address working waterfronts to protect them. It's something the legislature adopted several years ago, so this policy was introduced to help satisfy that requirement. But we can look at these, and if there's something you would like to remove, we certainly
Well,
can.
my biggest question is, what does redevelop marinas mean?
So anything like, this is a good example, if there was one that was destroyed, if they rebuilt, they would have to follow these policies.
It could apply to the St. Joe property
A
at
new
the
one.
boat ramp.
If it were if it were a marina, not so much just
No,
a single boat
but
ramp,
It's
but,
a working waterfront, yeah, I don't know what, I talked to Linda Shelley about this, and it was my understanding that we currently didn't really have anything that met that definition. I know we have a marina, and I know we, but I definitely think you guys should take a look at that, and
Well, but you said it's a state statute.
there's a statutory requirement that you look to protect working waterfronts. So, we can determine whether that includes a marina, that's a fishing marina, but I think primarily it refers to industrial working waterfronts where they're building boats or some
Well,
kind of,
it's
something
just
that's
not,
water related.
it makes me, when I read that, I think of Mexico Beach Marina,
Mhm.
puts them out of business. That's what I thought when I read those, some of the things that are in it.
Okay,
dockside.
because they can't meet these criteria.
Well, I don't think it'd be feasible to make.
Well, some of them I think they're required to, and I can look into it deeply.
But my point is they're
Anyway.
existing, so
Yes,
they're existing.
but they would have to do number 4. I think they're required to as a marina anyway. It's probably an EPA requirement to demonstrate oil spill cleanup capability. So some of these, like I said, I can look into it more deeply and have a better answer for you next week. But,
Okay, because that's concerning to me.
okay. That's
I mean, I don't see, there's not gonna be, in my opinion, any more marinas coming to Mexico Beach under our current layout. But if it's gonna affect the one we have, and the other one that is, I don't know if you call it a marina, they don't really just store boats there, they don't do,
boat storage.
they just, down dockside. But I don't know, man, it's just, that list of things there is,
Okay, I'll look into it and maybe I
Okay.
can send an answer before the next meeting.
and we'll look to make sure what that true definition is for working waterway.
And marinas.
I've been told we don't have anything here that truly meets that definition. but
well, I'd rather not be in there.
Okay,
With that being in the coastal management element, which we handled separately earlier in the year, remind me, I know we did the transmittal here, and I'm looking at the minutes from it in May. Has that, where are we on the adoption of that? Is that done, or that would be
you
part of?
did
our-
adopt it?
I think there was an ordinance adopted.
We may have,
I thought you had
and
the
I'm not at
first
every
reading,
meeting, so
but I
I'm
didn't
kind
I
of
thought you
fuzzy.
just had the first reading, that
Not the second.
I don't
wasn't
know.
finally.
But even, well, 2 things, even if you have adopted it, you can still change it.
Right.
And
Yeah.
if you haven't adopted it, after transmittal, you can still change it before you adopt it. You just have to let the state know what the differences are from the transmittal to the adopted
Yeah,
version.
we can always change something. I'm just thinking about this February 8th looming deadline. If it's something we've got to adjust, we may do it separately.
For
But,
the coastal element.
but I don't, Adrian's going to find out. He's looking right now.
Laura, on, page 1.-7,
Mhm. Of the strike through version?
1.1.5,
1.1.
it deals with tourist mixed use,
Mhm.
which we have 2 parcels in town that have that zoning category. And I did not get a chance to look up ordinance 513,
Okay.
but are the items listed in here, does this alter tourist mixed use in
Those are-
any way?
Those are the ordinances for the St. Joe land.
And also would be the same ones for the Corey property?
I don't know if the Corey property is in there, if that's one of those, but there,
So-
It's tourist mixed use.
Tourist mixed use.
So policy 1.1.5 specifically refers to a map that only looks at the St. Joe property. So these policies were written for the St., I think by the St. Joe property and came
That
to
they
you.
were, like I say, I didn't get a chance to look at 513, but if that's the ordinance that I'm trying to,
It only would pertain to that.
well,
This-
why
this-
wouldn't it pertain to
It's up to
the,
you.
the
You
Corey
can.
property?
You can.
Well, I'm just saying,
But
it's
well-
on that.
You could, but this is specifically talking about maximum number of dwelling unit, it's pretty specific. So if you wanted to address the Corey property specifically, we could create policies just for that.
Well, if they're zoned tourist mixed use, how do you avoid these?
Yeah, that
Because
occurred maybe 18
it's
months ago.
referring to a
We changed
specific
the
map
comp.
and a specific ordinance.
They had a comp plan change for their category.
So we just need to include that.
Yeah,
Include the
that
Corey
may be
property.
lack of sharing information, but originally the only property in the city that was in that category was the St. Joe land to the west of the city, but it's something like 70 acres of Corey property. They went through the process and had,
Yes, but
Yeah,
this
but-
policy only refers to map 1.1.
So it sounds like what we need to do is just get that ordinance for the Corey property and include that. Put a policy in there for the Corey
Well,
property.
I
If that's
guess,
what you want to do.
I guess my question
Otherwise,
becomes
yeah.
though, if the Corey property isn't included and it's zoned tourist mixed use, what guidelines do they follow?
there is a tourist mixed use up above. This 1.1.5 is specific to the St. Joe property.
Oh, I'm
But
sorry,
there is a,
I'm sorry,
yeah.
you're exactly right.
So
That's at the
Corey
bottom of the
property-
page.
is on, the strike-through version is on page 1-5.
The strike-through version gave me a migraine.
I know, I'm sorry.
I dealt with a real version.
So
I
the
tried.
regular tourist mixed use category would apply to,
So what is
Corey property.
what is that 1.2 map?
I think that's the future land use map overall. Let me open it up.
I do not have a signed copy of 695, so we must not approve it.
I didn't-
Okay.
I guess because they both reference ordinance 513, that's what made me think.
Yeah, I think it's all, the St. Joe property. Well, she's looking at, industrial and agricultural zoning categories, the P and Z Monday night eliminated those, so we'll be removing those from the comp plan. So we don't really have any industrial or agricultural. And there was for conservation, there was an impervious of 0 in conservation, so we're gonna, the P and Z is gonna up that to 20% impervious, because if you think about the dedicated beach, we had restrooms there. If we leave it at 0, we can't put those restrooms back. We couldn't put the restroom down at the beach at Canal, so you're gonna change that to 20% impervious, so we can make
Use
Oh,
some
sure
of
we
it.
can put the restrooms back and pavilion back and those types of things.
So it actually should, that policy 1.1.5 should actually refer to map 1.2, which is just the tourist mixed use area
Okay.
that the St.
Yeah,
Joe.
that's the St. Joe land.
Yeah,
All right, but the 11 things or 12 things or whatever, how many, or the language in there is the same language that's in 513.
in the ordinance.
yes,
And you are right, they did present that
Yes.
at the time of the annexation. Their planner basically wrote that.
yes,
Okay.
that's usually how it.
Yeah, I guess my question is, so Nick, for this development they're doing,
right,
I haven't looked at the ordinance, but they're gonna be held to that.
yeah, and this makes sense, because you wouldn't apply the 750
Mhm.
units and the 55,000 square feet to a different piece of
Yeah.
property that's a smaller property, so. But yes, these are the rules that were
They're
adopted,
down.
I think 2006, oh yeah.
It's kind of like an overlay district that only applies to a certain area of the city, and this policy applies to that
But
area.
if you have other properties that are zoned in the same category, what applies to them?
Just the tourist mixed use category. That's
Okay.
inside of the other the part that's higher up in the plan, there's a regular tourist mixed use category that addresses what you can do, just like every other category.
Okay.
I have a question. You're talking about the St. Joe property that was annexed in 2006 that is bound by this specific group of criteria. I remember the St. Joe rep saying in the meeting that they wanted to build a total of, well, I added it up, 777 dwellings in this section by the boat ramp that they want to start with. But I also know from the information that I have that the entire annexed area was a total of about 750 residences. So I'm curious to know how that's going to work with them building 750 plus residences in 1/3 of the property.
Is there a difference between dwelling unit and living unit?
I don't think so.
Okay, because a living unit would be like condos, as I was wondering, that a dwelling would be one building.
The plan that they showed was dense, but keep in mind, we don't have an actual application. I'm not sure if that plan complies with the rules.
Well, I think it bears looking at, because if they're going to build 750 in this 1/3 section, and the original criteria were 750 for the entire thing, including what's down on the beach, that's something you need to look at.
Well, what I just heard our attorney say is they're gonna be held to that, the standards.
We gotta have a plan first, we gotta know the plan.
So, and they haven't asked for any type of variance from that. They said they're gonna build to that, so that's what we expect to see. I haven't looked at those ordinances, but that's what that's how
When
they'll
they
be held.
bring something to look at, we'll do that. All right, other comments on the, first of all, how are we adjusting as we go, or are we just speaking out loud, or were you making notes?
I am making notes. Yep.
Okay, so,
We'll send you a clean copy by Friday. Can you do that on Friday?
Yeah.
And then the transmittal hearing is
on the
next
ones
Tuesday.
that, on the concerns, I
On the
guess?
comments that you've made today.
Are there other comments from anyone else in the room?
At what point do you start measuring the height, at the mean height of the watermark? Or,
Now, that was a concern of mine. I don't like it that it goes from 48, and I think that's one of the nice things about Mexico Beach, that what the council, whoever decided on that, kudos to them, that the height only goes to so much, and now it can go up to 65 because of the 17 feet.
Well, it's always been able to do
It's,
that.
they've always been.
yeah,
able to
did
do
they
that.
That
start
did-
at
that's
the
not new.
17
Okay.
and then measure from there up?
The 32 feet starts at the finished floor, but what we've talked about, and keep me straight on this, Laura, you can't, if you know, you only have to go, let's say you only have to elevate 2 feet above base flood elevation, then you get, your 32 feet starts at 2 feet. You can't elevate your house 20 feet and then get the 32 feet on top of it. Your finished floor will start wherever the requirement is for base flood elevation for your zoning your flood
So
category.
if I have to go up 17 feet, I start from there
Yes,
to measure up?
yes, it's
Now,
the
with this
requirement.
proposal.
Yes,
With
with
this
this,
proposal.
But now,
what's before you.
now that's based on that you get a flood certificate. They give you a mark of where your flood elevation is?
So it depends, the way it's written, it depends on where you're located. If you're
That's right.
within the CCCL, you're gonna do whatever the Army Corps tells you have to start from, and then you're measuring up from that point. Outside of that measurement, currently, that's the only thing you have, you're restricted to, but with this proposal, anything north of the CCCL in AE or VE zones, you have a measurement from the base flood elevation, whatever that number ends up being with the new FEMA maps.
Right. And we talked about this in P and Z, depending on what we do with the flood maps, that would be adjusted. We would have to adjust that, because, and we, I don't know, I'm not sure you were at that meeting when P and Z talked about it, but it's gonna start at the requirement. So whatever the requirement is, that's where your finished floor is gonna be, whether it's 17 feet for DEP, or 2 feet in your zoning category, or if we freeboard 2 feet. in a particular category, that's where it would start. It's
Well-
gonna start at the finished floor.
Help me think this through, but if you're in a flood zone, in order to build, you have to go get a flood elevation certificate. When you get that, it tells you that's where you start. Is that where the 32 feet start?
Yes.
That's what it's off.
Well, if we, like, the example I just used, if, let's say, here's the base flood elevation, we freeboard 2 feet, then it would start at that 2 feet.
Right,
Not at the base.
but-
Whatever the requirement is, that's where your
Right,
32
but
feet
it's,
starts.
it stems from a flood elevation
Yes.
certificate
Yes.
that is required for that property because that location changes, as you just said. I mean,
Yes.
location in town, there's not a set number.
Right, not city.
Or not a set elevation number
Yeah, it depends on where you're
where
located.
you're located, that's right.
So the idea is this would
Elevate.
prevent,
Yeah, at this point, I would have to go up 7 feet.
We don't know.
So I'd start.
Well, you don't know
from
Yes.
until you
seven.
get a flood
Exactly.
elevation.
Well,
Wherever
and
you're-
right now, that's where.
Oh,
it is.
okay.
yes,
Right,
yes.
okay.
And this
If
would
they
prevent
change it, I'll
people
be
from,
higher.
elevating their home when they don't have to, and then wanting to start their 32 feet above that.
So
That's just clear as mud.
I'm
confused.
But the insurance is allowing breakaway walls downstairs.
They've always done that too.
They're gonna count that as a floor,
No,
No.
first living floor,
first living floor, okay.
first living floor.
So
Okay.
I'm confused because, so are you saying like, let's just throw out 12 foot? So then you're saying 12 foot, 2 foot?
No, I was just using the example, if the city, let's say the flood map says you have to be here, but the city says we're gonna make you go 2 feet above that because of
Oh,
what we've
okay.
seen.
If the city was to decide.
Yeah. But it's whatever the requirement will be for your area, the flood elevation, whatever that requirement is, your 32 feet starts there. If you're on the water and you're in CCCL, if they make you go up 12 feet, your 32 feet starts at that finished floor above 12. So you would have 12 plus 32.
So it'd be 44 feet.
All right, any other comments on things that, all right, now, very important for me, when is the transmittal hearing?
Tuesday. It's coming
All
Tuesday.
right, now, the transmittal hearing, help me understand that, what happens then? That's when the public and everybody has a chance to see, how do they get this?
We'll be putting it on the website Friday.
There is
This
a
one's
version
on
on the
right now.
website now.
This one's
Yeah,
on.
but
Clean
we'll have,
version without
we'll
the
get
screen.
a clean updated version on Friday. With the changes that we've discussed today, we'll be out there Friday.
Be Friday.
Just like, yeah, when your package comes out.
And keep in mind that we transmit it to the state after that hearing, but you could still make changes.
Oh, I know,
You're
but,
not-
the public is, I mean, that's just so after Tuesday, we're through with the comp. I mean,
We hope we are.
Well,
You'll send
Well, I
it to
know,
the
but-
state and they'll
then
review
You have to
it.
adopt it.
They
then we
probably-
move to the LDR.
Well, you've got to adopt the
You'll
comp
have,
plan.
and then
They'll
they'll
do it.
review it. I doubt they'll have comments and it'll come back and you'll have to adopt by ordinance.
But that won't be by February 8th.
well, I'll walk through the schedule. So because there's such an effort to try to get it done by February 8th, what we have intended now, and it could be altered, but what we're getting ready to notice, you got your transmittal hearing on the 15th, I believe. Then we haven't actually started an ordinance adoption, because you obviously have to adopt this by ordinance. So in order to get a first reading and a second reading, we've got first reading scheduled for January 22nd, I believe, and then a adoption hearing, which is your second reading on, is it February 5th? Let me double check. So you're through the heavy lifting on the comp plan, but you'll see it again a few more times before February 8th.
No, but when,
Can we do that though, because the state has to look at it first, is that what it is?
Well, you can't do the adoption hearing until they've looked at it.
Yeah.
And ordinarily, I wouldn't expect them to do it in less than 30 days, but Linda Shelley's been coordinating with them in advance. Doesn't anticipate it taking that long. Of course, if they haven't provided their comments back, we're still waiting. we'll have to delay our adoption hearing.
But it won't affect the February 8th, here's what you can do.
The plan is to have it formally adopted a few days shy of February 8th. It's February 5th.
Fifth.
Is
Same time.
the adoption hearing that's on the penciled in schedule as of yesterday from primarily from Canada.
So
And
Nick,
if the state doesn't return it to us,
Then we'll have to delay.
then we have to delay the February eighth.
So she'll have it
February
back.
5th.
and so Nick, explain, so answer the mayor's question, if you would, about, let's say they delay it a week.
Mhm.
Can we still move forward, because if somebody comes in on February the 8th and they're ready to pull permits.
Well,
So
there is
this-
another hook, because even if you adopt it on the 5th, you have a 31-day challenge period that it's not effective. You have to wait 31 days, and the ordinance has to say that.
I'm trying to think if there's anything in the comp plan that would prohibit, it's the LDR primarily that's gonna affect rebuilding.
Well, if we approve the LDR, the worst case scenario, we may have somebody out of compliance, but we'd have to come back and readjust the LDR at a later date. If they come in and pull on February the 8th of permit, they're not gonna be too far along with anything they're doing that it should affect them, I would think.
I'm thinking the only area it may affect is the high density, if you do the high density residential issue, that would affect it. So maybe folks in high density residential may have to wait until,
Talking about the DCA issue?
So just so I'm clear, did you want me to change the high-density residential to 18?
I do,
I think you guys are, did you make a decision?
I do. I think that's what we, to me, that's the,
It's reasonable.
I wanna make sure on that issue we're accomplishing what we intend. So I think we're really focused on these very narrow lots where there's townhomes right now. So, and the idea is to be able to allow basically townhomes to be rebuilt. Or do we have anything that would address setbacks or impervious surface? Because those are the big issues when you have a narrow lot. And it's not really the density. You can put a unit on it, but
That's it.
if you're supposed to have a setback on each side, you can't really squeeze the building in. I think the setbacks are
That's
just
in
the
the
way
LDR.
of regulations.
Well,
The setbacks are, but the impervious surface is in the
Yeah.
comprehensive plan.
So,
So the
yeah,
impervious is
they may
not-
have issues.
But that would
with
kick it back too. Al's trying to make them conforming, but if the impervious still says it's only 50%, that might kick them out, even though you're trying to make it legit with the 18, you would have to look at that. You would have to make sure that the.
what is the impervious on?
It's
50%.
High density.
Only
It's
50?
It's 50.
It's 50?
So you wouldn't, that would probably kill you right there.
That's what it is
Not
today.
always, but a lot of times.
It's not
I mean, if you
changing.
have a house and you've got maybe a pool in the back and a concrete driveway, you're covering most of your property with impervious surface.
You know, we've had some issues with that anyway, coming in front of us, so that's.
I don't think we're gonna get every scenario covered, even under that, but you will get a very, very high percentage of them.
You're also allowing people options, so if they have ways to rebuild, they might have to park under the home and they didn't used to in order to
But
get
they have
below
to
that
go up
impervious
anyway,
surface
that's-
threshold.
I was just thinking, if you take a 75 by 100 lot and you switch it to the 18, that gives you you need 2420 per unit to put a triplex on there. And you got your setbacks, so then I would say, then you would have to multiply out, you got 7,500 and you got 2420 times 3. Then you'd have to look at the ratio on your pervious there, impervious.
But I think we're primarily talking about lots that are not even 20 feet wide, right? I mean,
Well,
this
they're
isn't
on,
so much about getting multiple units, it's finding a way to build a unit.
Right, but if they change that whole high density residential area to density to 18,
Unless they
That's a
combine
little-
parcels though, they'll still have serious limitations on impervious surface.
I think the mayor was trying to cover the
Potentially.
non-conforming stuff that's already.
Yeah, it's
built
just
there.
so many there.
There's so many there.
So many there.
So like a lot of them are on this high-density residential, and they can't even put 2 units back on it the way the 8 units read per acre, so he's saying let's,
I think they'll work it out. I think the
Yeah.
landowners will work it out.
So did you say most of those are 75 by 150?
75 by 100,
75 by 100.
or 75 by 90. That's
Yeah.
most of the stuff on the south side of the highway.
I don't know, just think about, think about the, single-family homes there, and if you're going from 8 to 18. Just think about it.
Okay, we're thinking about that.
Doesn't say you can be less than doesn't say you can't build less than the 18.
It's pretty much 3 per lot is your ratio.
Yeah,
I mean,
but
that's it.
I don't know if you need to go that high.
Right,
So
so
that's
that's
not
that.
Well, you'd have to get it to the level where you could put 3 back on, and a lot of them have 3 or 4 on it now, and that's what he's trying.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
it's
what I'm
trying to-
saying. There's so many, that there's, in the single-family lots that are there now, there will still be on the south side of the road, those people, I don't think there'll be a rush to tear, or to build nothing but triplexes or quadplexes. I think there'll be just as many people that will want a single-family house there on that south side. But it gives those options, and I think that's what's important, give them the option in that area, so for me.
Mayor, wouldn't we just want to increase the density just to take care of those structures? Why would we wanna go more than that?
You could go
Just-
to 10 and probably, you could go
Yeah.
to 10 units the acre, and I think
Yeah.
you'd be okay for those.
Well, you need,
No.
well, what's the
But
division on?
75 times 100,
And then divide that
7,500 square
by,
feet.
divide that by 10, and how
I was
many,
dividing it by an acre.
I would divide it by 10, and that would give you the percentage, the,
In
Let me
unit
show you
3,
something.
the lot's
750.
You may have seen this.
Mhm.
Alright, well, all of those represent those little slivers,
Mhm.
and you can't do
Those
that with 10.
townhomes.
You can't do that with 10.
So are these the 75 by
Those-
100s?
Oh, no,
Well, those are-
no, those are little, probably, some of them may be 15 feet wide.
yeah, the original
Okay.
plat was a 75
But
by
these are
100.
platted already,
It
and
would
these
be
are
a
already
non-conforming.
ownerships.
No, they're all different. In
You follow
unit
me?
3,
I
do,
they're
I do.
50
Okay,
foot
Yeah.
so-
wide. If you
But
move
you
up
can't
to
do that with
4,
10.
they're
Okay.
75 foot, so they're different.
I can do an analysis with the parcel maps to kind of figure out.
Well, I like the 18.
Well, if we
I
go
mean, we
to
just can analyze it and make it, I mean, I don't know what we're trying to analyze, to be honest with you. If we want to keep the option open for that category to be back like we think of Mexico Beach being, then that's a great place to do that. And if I totally agree and admit that the single family, those lots that are not that way, they get a boost. They get an opportunity to add to their value in terms of putting more than a single family house. But that doesn't mean they'll do that. And I think I just think that with that volume, that's something that we should certainly give strong consideration to.
What about that family though, that since then has built to the guidelines, and then things possibly could change around it?
In other words, that's
Built to what guidelines?
single family home, and then next door you get, 5 units or something.
Well, have you looked down there?
I know,
Okay.
but I think that's what
I
you're
mean,
trying
if
to
you looked at
ask
every
about.
slab down there, I mean, they will know when they build what the density is. I mean, they'll know that that's a possibility. If I'm following you right, I mean, if you had a single-family home and you wanted to put it back and next to you was a single-family home, is that what you're saying? Then what's next to you now may be a triplex.
You're right.
Yeah, well, I mean, but they'll know that when they do whatever they're gonna do, they're gonna know what the density is.
That's
So,
still
my-
inconsistent with the neighborhood, because there's all those triplexes all over anyway with single
Yeah, I
family.
mean, it's,
So it's not an
you
inconsistency.
know you're in a
on
high
the
tourist
area.
area, and that's why it's,
So why are we even attempting to change, why not just keep it the way it is? On Pier Road, we're gonna have more dwellings, homes, whatever you wanna call it, in an area versus 26th Street or 27th Street or 38th Street or 34th Street. Just keep it as it is. If
How do you
somebody,
describe it?
pardon me?
How do you describe it? I think he's
Yeah.
coming from the fact that in here, it's saying 8 units, I think is what it
Yes,
is.
and,
And that's not
you know,
like it is.
like Rex's place, it was a duplex, but if they choose to do a single home, fine. But no more than a duplex. You know, I just
Well,
think.
that's not what that zoning
I know
category
it,
says.
I know it. You know, I mean, that was, I just don't understand why we're trying to add more homes and more homes. We're not that large. Can we accommodate all these structures? And yes, I think the people here currently will say, I like it the way it is. But as new people move in, they're gonna be looking at the dollar signs and saying, okay, I can get a quad here on my lot, let's go for it. And can the city handle it?
Well, they have to have a fairly large lot to have a quad though, because they gotta fit in those 4 units within the height restrictions, within the parking restrictions, within, there's.
Unless they stack them. They could have-
It's pretty much 3
Sure,
per
but
lot.
it's,
Yeah.
we, I mean,
Well,
it's
I-
not
They
They
anywhere
have to be
in the
side by
city
side,
is
they should be
48
up
feet.
on top of each other.
Well, they can't fit, still, you can't have that, you can only
It
have
might
a
be
unit.
3
If
stories.
it's 18 units per acre, you can't, just because you can go up a level, you can't put 3 more above if you've already got 3 down below. It's 3 units, whether they're, it's whether they're 10 feet tall or whether they're 32 feet tall. It's 3 livable units. You can't put any more units on top of that. And the density, it won't work, but.
Well, how do we wanna leave this?
I don't have a problem going up with the density, because I think the people that are there with the small lots need some help some way, but, and economics is gonna take over the other part of it. There's a lot of people that are gonna still put in single families, there's gonna be some that are gonna put in 3.
So just to give you an idea, a 7,500 square foot piece of property, 75 by 100, is 5.8 dwelling units to the acre, which would give you 5, because you can't have 0.8 dwelling units, so it would be 5 dwelling units to the
I
acre.
don't see how that comes up with that number.
With parking and everything taken
No,
in?
that's just the density.
Just the density.
We've always looked at it as that an acre is 43,560. You divide 18 into the acre, and you gotta have 24,
Well,
20.
I'm looking at the lot, I'm not looking at the density. I'm looking at a 75 by 100 foot lot, to figure out what that density is.
Well, if you gotta have 24/20 per, and this is the way Mexico Beach has always done it. Not they, even as a builder, you gotta have 24/20 per door. Then 3 times that puts you right there at your 75 by 100. That's 18 per acre. You're allowed 2,420 square feet.
I'm looking at
Whatever's-
it differently, I think, than you are. I'm looking at the
Because if
size
you
of
tell
the
me I can go
parcel
put
and what
5
that density
units
is.
on, if you just told me I just gain 2 more units per lot, then heck, I gotta go redo my whole plan. I mean, really, that's the way,
Right,
I don't know
you're
the
developing a
difference.
larger parcel, but Laura's right.
But
you're
they're,
looking
they're
at
all
an
individual lots. I
But
had
you're
to
looking
count,
at an
But you have individual
lot.
owners.
but I had to calculate each, it still calculates the same.
So
I mean,
it
I've got
sounds-
3,300 square
It's
feet,
not.
or 33,000 square feet, and I can only put 13
It
units
sounds
on
like
it.
the townhomes, if they're each on a 75 by 100 foot lot, they're within the 8 dwelling units to the acre right now.
You're looking at it from a subdivision, a large parcel, individual, that's how you would calculate it for an individual lot.
Huh? I'm very.
You're gonna go to the individual lots, all right?
Nah, anyway, it's still, and I don't wanna get into, I'm not part of the council, but the way it's always been looked at when we do our division is a 75 by 100 parcel, the most you're gonna get is 3 units on there. You're not gonna get 5.
I'm saying a 75 by 100 foot parcel is 5.8 dwelling units to the acre.
But that's not how we've been calculating it for all these years. if that's the
We'll
way,
compare math after.
yeah, 'cause
Well, then
That's a lot.
do whatever calculations and see what you would recommend. Let's just get,
Okay,
and give us a recommendation on how we can keep the character of that section of the city
Sure.
better than, I don't think 8 is gonna do that.
okay,
Okay, and then we can discuss that.
okay.
Is that fair with everyone?
Oh,
Get
yeah.
that? Okay.
Sure.
yeah, 'cause I think we've been looking at 8, if you take a 75 by 100 lot, and you did the 8 into the 43,560, then you would need like a little over 5,000 square feet
You're
per
backing-
unit, and then you're over
It's
your,
backing into it differently.
yeah, you're over your set, but that's how we've,
Okay,
It's not
that's what we're
how-
talking about here.
All right, are there other questions or comments? If not, we'll get something on Friday. Transmittal hearing is it's part of our meeting for Tuesday, is that right?
yes.
And we'll go from there.
Nick, did they talk about the 5 o'clock requirement? Or are they all gonna be at
That'll
one?
be down the road. We'll have one.
So, you know, the issue is, in one of, these are for the ordinance adoptions, in one of, because they involve so much land, it's the whole city. One of the 2 hearings needs to be, after 5 PM, which
Okay.
ordinarily would be no big deal for us, except recently we've been doing all of our meetings at 1. So that could either be, I would just suggest we do the February 5th meeting at 5, because it's further off.
Then we can do the LD.
Right.
We just have a dedicated meeting.
Can you go back to the hook? Because you were, I think we got something, you mentioned on the 9th, Frank comes in and wants his permit. Is the hook, we can't do that.
You can't implement the plan until the appeal period is over, which is 31 days from the date of the adoption.
But that is gonna only be for someone who's a non-conforming structure that would come in, because it's only gonna be those that you just were talking about.
Your current plan is in place
So,
until,
so that affects me.
Okay, it's gonna affect the zoning category that we've been discussing.
yes.
Correct.
Because everything, all of the densities and all of that's the same in the rest of them, other than the commercial, we're just changing that language, so that's not gonna be, we're going back to what we had.
Right, right.
And I don't know that water and sewer is gonna be entirely ready for that part
Yeah,
anyway in 30 days.
right, exactly. Keep in
But
mind,
that's fine, I was thinking what she was fixing to say was, well, we're gonna have to delay, but only for that
right,
zoning category.
That changed.
right, and keep in mind that you're not gonna come in and say, I'm ready to pull my permits. You have a long way to go before you're ready to before we're gonna issue a permit. It's gonna
Me?
if you're doing
I've
talking
almost
about,
got everything together.
you've been through DEP and you've done all of that?
I've got somebody getting me DPE pit permit, I've got the architects,
It's gonna, I
structural
can't imagine
engineers, I've got
that those are
everything
gonna
to
be
go.
ready in 30
because
days.
we've got to
it
get
seems
up and
like.
running.
But we will, I think we can go ahead and start letting people come in and educating them, as long as we don't issue those permits until the appeals period is over with. We can allow people to start moving forward on collecting their information, going through the DEP process.
So I have to wait 30 more days.
Peggy, how could you get something drawn up when you don't know what your flood elevation is?
They've drawn the building and then we'll just put the,
Oh,
on top of the
okay, you're,
elevation. My building is already done.
But you're in commercial, right?
I'm in
This
commercial.
this won't affect
They
it.
won't affect it.
oh, that's right, they're not even in that
Oh,
zoning
okay.
category. My bad, yeah. Yeah, that'll get confusing to me, I'm gonna tell somebody something wrong, I can tell you all that.
We used to be
You're
a
right.
tourist.
Okay,
So just to clarify this 31-day issue Laura was talking about, I'm looking right at the statute, so I'm glad you brought it up. So after we do our adoption hearing on February 5th, technically the state has 5 days to respond back that they've received our full package, and then the amendments become effective 31 days after the state has notified us that the plan amendment package is complete. So assuming our package is great, they don't say something's missing, they don't ask for something else, we're looking at 31 to 36 days before the new comp plan amendments are effective. So you're absolutely right. It's not even really one of those situations where we can just apply them at the risk that someone might challenge them, they're not affected yet.
So if they're not affected.
So we've been struggling with the potential of adjusting your moratorium for a while. If you truly want these to be in effect when people are building, you should consider that. If you think that it won't impact a lot of properties and it's okay, then.
Only impact
Take
Tanya and the
action.
building department, if 50 people in that zoning
That's
category
right.
show up, that's the only time it's gonna impact.
Why take the chance?
Yeah, I would recommend not moving the moratorium day,
No.
just letting
I
us
don't wanna do
manage
that.
that.
No, no.
We get a lynch mob out there.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, if we explain what we gotta do, I mean, that's all we can do, is accommodate as many as we can. And those that, you know, I don't,
It's not particularly our decision that we put us in that
sounds
date.
easy to say, I won't be up here all day, you might say that.
Are you gonna be in state?
On vacation.
I know you
All
are.
right, all right, I just have a little levity, I can't ever fix that. All right, so are we good?
Just something to add to that topic though. So we're also anticipating adopting the land development regulations on the 5th of February, and it doesn't have that rule. So a lot of these things are covered also in land development regulations. So unless we're putting something in land development regulations that are inconsistent with the comp plan, which I don't think we are, then we're still covered, we can apply the land development regulations to address most of these scenarios.
And I would
There you go.
recommend scheduling just a 5 PM on that date dedicated to these two topics only, and just do it that way.
Good suggestion, because there's no telling how much discussion there
Yeah,
is.
so just these two topics, 5 PM on the 5th, LDR and comp plan.
Is there a,
I mean, I'm good with that too, I don't think we need to have a big agenda.
no,
Just-
All right, so again, I'm sorry. Tuesday of next week, we're going to finalize, we're gonna have the
First,
first
you know,
hearing,
the transmittal.
well, the transmittal, but that's when the public, it's sort of, to me, I think that is finalized,
Yes.
even though it's not technically not.
But it's a hearing where public is invited to provide input and.
Right.
Yes.
Right, okay.
is there a place?
I'm desperately searching for a new location
Well,
to
I'm-
move us out of here.
Oh, please.
Just particularly for that night, on the 5th, because a lot of people might show up.
Oh, on
On
the
the
5th,
fifth.
yeah.
And, I mean, if we're back here after that, so be it.
Check the
But-
Baptist church.
But,
That was her idea.
yeah, but,
If they move their supplies
Yeah,
out.
well, that's what I
They're
said.
moving them now.
If they move their supplies
moving
out,
them
maybe
now.
the Baptist church would allow us to, you could go in the garage
Are
too.
we ready? I
I
mean,
just
are
have
we?
one question, could
Huh?
Nick clarify,
Sure.
and that for the next meeting, this density thing has got me perplexed
We're
now.
gonna get a recommendation, she's
I
gonna
mean,
do
she's
some
gonna-
research,
Yeah, you're gonna own how
Just
you can
math.
get
and
five
you're gonna
instead.
redo your plan.
Yeah.
The three of us sit down and do it together, because I'm getting something close to what you're getting, I wanna make sure we're all the same.
Yeah, cause that
She's
is just,
talking something
I
different than
think
you're
it's
talking.
something different.
She's talking the number of 75
She's
by
gonna
100
explain.
lots you can do in an acre, not the number of structures in an acre.
I'm saying
no,
that on a
she's saying,
I'm saying that on a 50 by 100-foot lot, I'm telling you what the density is of that lot.
Not the number of units you're allowed to build.
Right,
Yes.
And that
not the
makes
number of
sense.
units on it, but
Because you
what the
said it's
density
3
of that
point
lot is.
something units could be built, right? So 3 units.
2420 is what I always came up with, and you multiply that times 3 and you're close to the 70.
But she's
If you have
Yes.
one house on 7,500 square feet, it is a 5.8 dwelling unit to the acre house.
But are you saying you can put 5 dwelling units
No,
on that lot?
no, because I don't know what I'm not saying I know what the density is of the category, I'm saying that's the density of that
Well, we're,
lot.
okay, we're just
I think.
talking about the 18.
I calculated, like you calculated, it's how many units you could put on that
You're talking
particular
two
lot.
different
We are talking
Yeah.
two
You're
different
talking
things.
two different
We're talking
things.
two different things,
Oh, well, you,
yeah.
well, just, everybody needs to know
We
that.
will present it, we'll
Yeah,
do
we just-
research and present it next Tuesday and.
It's, I think we're where we're at. I mean, the city's-
Are we ready?
Yes.
I mean, is there anything other,
Math is math.
all right, motion for adjournment?
Second.
All right. And so, I should have said, Tanya, didn't say it. The meeting with the governor, I think all of us in that room that were from the city were, I left there very impressed with his staff and with those people that were supporting him. Whether or not that computes to a penny, I don't know, but I really do appreciate, and I know all of us, that he took that time to come here, and the way, the questions he asked, the way he listened, I just thought, I expect something good to happen.
I've been pretty doom and gloomy the whole process, but I'm optimistic.
And I love what he says about the cold.
What did he say about the court?
Nothing to
So he said he's
They
coming,
operate on their own, and who, the question got asked, well, who can do that? He said the president can handle the court. And which is, unfortunately, that seems to be the,
so will.
Tanya and I can't handle the court, I tell you.
So will his office then
Well,
address that with,
Mhm.
I think you will
Or do
see
you
much
need to get-
communication through her. I
Okay.
really think that will happen.
don't let him know
His,
that.
the new administration staff, the cabinet he selected, they are so extremely knowledgeable
Okay.
compared
Very.
to the
You can
last
tell
group.
that.
Who was
Okay.
very knowledgeable, understand it, get it. The new, Moskowitz, who's the new director of emergency management, was in the
Direct.
disaster business.
Okay.
You can tell it too,
He
couldn't you?
understands it, he gets it, he understands the debris issues, the amount of money we're looking at.
And we got direct
So-
answers from him. He was
Good.
very
Okay.
blunt.
Absolutely.
He said he was coming back next week.
Well,
to
Brock
say-
Long is
He's
He's
coming.
coming back, no, the director's coming back to Mexico
I believe he's
Beach.
coming back with FEMA
With-
next week with Rob
In,
Long.
okay, in Mexico Beach, okay.
Now, that's the meeting we're trying to find the place for the entourage. Adrian, I'm sure you'll find a place. You have so many choices.
Maybe the tennis courts.
Hey,
I got one I need to know.
What about the white team? Is
Have
it
you
gonna
come
be
in?
there?
It's a mess over there, I don't know.
move it to the
Move it
tennis
to
court.
tennis court, there you go.
Recall the guy in St.
We
Joe,
also thought
Rich.
about Mango Marley's tent as well, talking
Yeah.
to Mango Marley.
Okay. All right. Thank you, everybody, for your
I got a